Welcome to Leadership Works, the podcast focused on leadership in our challenging world. Now introducing your host, Dr. John Bedker, a leader, practitioner, and a scholar. It's a pleasure to have everyone on the Leadership Works podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Leadership Works podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John Bedker. Today we're going to talk about reflection, an important leadership tool. My comments today are informed by Donald Schoen, the author of the seminal book, The Reflective Practitioner. Leaders are challenged to share their vision, to share their values, and ultimately to paint a word picture for those they serve and those they lead. A picture about the path forward, what threats and what opportunities the future may hold, and how to prepare for both. A successful leader is a reflective leader. In real time, in crisis, or in an emergency, the leader may not have time for reflection. They must act. But this action is grown from periods of previous reflection. It is reflection that prepares the leader to act with purpose, with intention, and with a measure of clarity. For leaders, proaction is better than reaction. Now, none of us can predict the future. That future is certainly uncertain. The successful leader may need both proactive skills and reactive skills. Reflection is the means to prepare for both. Well, how do leaders gain that vision, that wisdom, that view of what the future may portend and what effect the future may have on you, those you serve, your enterprise, your family, all these things, and so many more important factors? Situational awareness is an important leadership core competency. Another important leadership competency related is known as positional awareness. Knowing what has happened, what is happening, and what could or might happen in the future all contribute to a leader's awareness and understanding. Where are you as a leader? What are your people, your enterprise? What's going on internally and externally, both near and far from you and your business, that could help you better serve those and the enterprise you are entrusted? Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, said, "By three methods we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest." In this episode of the Leadership Works podcast, let's engage in some reflective practice. Each of your situations is unique. Now, I can't begin to share that I understand each of the nuances of your business, your enterprise, your circumstance, certainly your leadership journey. But we can each look to the future and look at what may affect each of us, our employer, our employment, our family, our community. This list becomes quite large. Our world is challenged. It is troubled. It is turbulent. And yes, it can be chaotic. Through all of this, we cannot lose sight that while there may be threats, maybe many threats, there may also be opportunities. And again, perhaps many opportunities. Opportunities to be of service, to help our enterprise, to help our customers. A leader can do many things. Reflection may provide a view to see opportunity. I encourage each of you to focus in these turbulent times not on threat, but on opportunity. I think that's a key takeaway of this podcast. Okay, here we go. Not the nitty-gritty of your life or your people or your enterprise or your customers, but this bigger world. Those things that could affect all of us regardless of circumstance. A world that affects us each and every day. Let's reflect on that bigger picture in this podcast. Some of these areas of reflection might seem distant or foreign or unrelated to you, but I will offer they are not. We all live here. In each of these axes I will offer can have an effect on each of us. So let's start by setting a timeline. Let's say 12 to 24 months. Let's go out and look 1 to 2 years from now. Okay? That will be our timeline. And I'm going to begin with this axis of reflection with the military. This may be a foreign one for many of you. We only have about 2% of us that serve. But it's in the news. It's in our minds. It's in our TVs, our newspapers. We're reading about military actions and activity regularly today. So let's take that view, that 1 to 2 years out, and look at the military axis first. Now, I've done this intentionally because I do think it is an important reflection. Okay, here we go. Some reflections to consider militarily. Where will we be with the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Will Russia be succeeding? Will Ukraine be succeeding? Will it be a stalemate? Each of these could affect you. Each of these could affect your business. What will the USA's role be 1 to 2 years from now? It's very present in the news at the moment, but where will we be from the U.S. point of view 1 to 2 years from now? What will NATO's role be? Very unified today. Where will they be 1 to 2 years from now? Both of those could have a consequence to you, your family, your business. Will the sanctions that are currently in place be effective or have been effective? 1 to 2 years from now, will sanctions still be in place? Again, these things could affect you. Will Americans see this fight, Russia and Ukraine, as it is currently described as a fight for democracy? Well, 1 to 2 years from now, will that still be true? Will this be perceived as a fight for democracy or not? Well, that could affect you. It will affect you. What about the rest of our turbulent world? Now, recently, President Biden took a trip to the Pacific area, made several visits, and in his discussions commented on the relationship between China and Taiwan. When asked if China invaded Taiwan, what would America do? And President Biden made comments to the effect that we would support Taiwan. Well, 1 to 2 years from now, if in fact China advances on Taiwan to literally take it over, what will be the USA response? Is it possible that the USA could be engaged in a war in both Russia and China simultaneously. Wow. Now there's a reflection. And I'm not suggesting any of these things, by the way, but I think it's worthy of our reflective practice. So that's a scary reflection. But reflect on how that joint military tumult could affect you, your business, your family. If the United States is engaged in two wars simultaneously, I would argue it may have a significant effect on all of us. A worthy reflection. Well, if one or both or none of these happens, let's hope it's none, what will other countries of the world do while the U.S. is focused on these two regions? What will North Korea do if the U.S. is occupied with other events in Russia and Ukraine, or China and Taiwan, or other places? What about Israel, the Middle East, Iran, Iraq? Many places to consider that could have a consequence on you, on your family, on your business, as life as we know it. Okay, so this military axis, that's our first reflection. As I said, lots to reflect upon. We don't know the answers, but each of these reflections could affect us, could affect you, and therefore, as a leader, a person on a leadership journey, it is important to spend some time to think and to reflect. Let's go on to a social reflection. Well, it's certainly in the news. It's forefront in our minds at the moment, but will gun violence, mass shootings, and the gun culture in the U.S. continue unabated 1 to 2 years from now? Now, those of you that are regular listeners to the Leadership Works podcast know that I've done a podcast on gun violence and mass shootings previously. Gave a lot of data, a lot of figures, presented that important issue. We talk about needing to do something, but do we have the will? 1 to 2 years from now, where will this gun culture be in the United States? I think that's an important reflection because each of us wants to think that it would be safe to walk into our place of worship, our church. And what we know sadly is we've had a mass shooting in a church. We think going to the grocery store would be a normal, routine thing. But we know that there's been a mass shooting in a grocery store. What if we went out in the evening to a concert or entertainment? Well, we know there have been many mass shootings in places of entertainment. You know, this list goes on. From Uvalde, the most recent front page story of mass shooting, I think the current count is we've now had 21 mass shootings since then. In this reflection, will we have changed? Think about that. It does affect us. It affects us all because it's unknown. Will a woman's right to choose be largely gone 1 to 2 years from now? Well, 1 to 2 years from now, the Supreme Court opinions on abortion will likely have come out. Another Supreme Court opinion on guns will likely have come out. Will our Supreme Court largely be a political tool of Republicans' agenda, or will there be equal justice under the law? Well, this woman's right to choose is an important one. It affects roughly half the population. A worthy reflection. And of course, the coronavirus, we can't forget that. Where are we with the COVID pandemic? 1 to 2 years from now, will COVID still be with us? Will it be a thing of the past? How are you going to be engaged or not in our public health? Now, never forget that as a leader, you are the voice. You're the one sharing that vision. Not only in what you say, and keep in mind, even though you think people aren't listening, they really are. They're hearing what you say. They're reaching judgment. They're also hearing what you are not saying. So not only what you have done, but what you have failed to do. So with COVID, we need to think about things like that. Are you engaged in our public health? It does affect every business. Having people at work, having them healthy, having them productive is critical. So think about this COVID pandemic and think about where we might be 1 to 2 years from now and what your voice, your role might be in our public health. This last item on the social axis I'll touch on is it has to do with climate change, another major component. But I'm going to use electric cars literally as the vehicle. 1 to 2 years from now, do you have an electric car, or are you planning to buy an electric car? Is climate change something that you're going to be engaged, or is it just an idea that really isn't real for you? And again, that voice as a leader is important. People will be listening to you. People will be hearing you. All right, the next axis, let's go to economically. Well, this is the one everybody wants to hop on first, and I intentionally put it a little further down the list. It is critically important, to be sure, but I wanted to mention these other things because we need to think broadly as we reflect. But let's look economically because it is important. Will we be in a recession 1 to 2 years from now? Well, we know currently the challenges of going to a grocery store and buying groceries, to the gas station and filling up the gas tank. We're keenly aware of that. But where will we be 1 to 2 years from now? Will we be back to normal, whatever that is, but things that people feel more comfortable with? Or will it be this recession that people talk about looming in the future? Or this bigger word, stagflation? This could affect every business and the decision-making of every business leader. It could affect you and your family, to be sure. Where will the stock market be? Well, many people are not even in the stock market, but a lot are. Will the market be up? Will it be sort of the same? Or will it be down 1 to 2 years from now? And one of those underlying important questions to that is, where will your pension be? Where will the capital resources of your business be? Financial planning for you and your business are important reflections, worthy of your regular reflective practice. And again, that's another one of those foot stompers. Please hear that. Reflective practice is key, and I would argue critical, regularly for you on the economic axis. Okay, let's look at politics. Always a sensitive topic, which is perhaps why it's an important reflection. 1 to 2 years from now, the November 2022 midterm elections will have occurred. Who will be the majority? Who will be the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, in the U.S. Senate, in your state legislature? Who will be the majority in your local governments? Will President Biden be planning a run for re-election in 2024, or will he not be running? If President Biden does not run, who will be the Democratic nominee? Who will be the Republican nominee? How will this affect you? How will it affect your business? And a lot of people say, yeah, I don't get involved in that. I don't care. That's somebody else. Wow. Don't do that. It can affect you. It will affect you, and it may very well affect your business. This political axis is an important reflection. If the Republicans, as example, control Congress after the November midterms, will anything get done in 23 and 24, that 1 to 2 year window out? If not, what does that mean for your business, your family, and for you? And lastly, I'll pose this reflection, which I hope I know the answer to, but you never know. And that is, do you plan to vote? Many states have voter suppression laws currently on the books, ready to go, being debated. As a leader, not to take a political point of view, but to express the responsibility of citizenship for each of us to step up and to vote for those we choose. But to make the point that you plan to vote, and share that. Not about who to vote for, why to vote for them, what to vote for, but to participate in the process. Well, there's a quick macro reflection. Many things, but important things that you could be affected by, that your business could be affected by, your family could be affected by, your way of life could be affected by. So we looked at social, we looked at political, we looked at economic, and we certainly looked at military. Each of these is an important axis of reflection. And it does make a case for reflective practice, because things that are external can have a very significant consequence to you and those around you. My final thought for your reflective practice is this: 1 to 2 years from now, who are we as Americans? What are our values, our guiding principles? Not what we say or would like to think, but what are they really? How do we act? 1 to 2 years from now, how do we act? What does it mean to be an American, and what do we do to represent that? Reflective practice is important for the successful leader. Situational awareness and positional awareness aid in framing our views of the future, what may happen. Reflective practice engages the leader in both threat and opportunity scenarios of what may occur and how to position oneself to lead, what can be done, what considerations to reflect upon so that proaction and reaction can benefit those you serve. I'll share this quickly. In preparation for this podcast, went to several friends of mine, colleagues, who I believe have very current and very clear reflective practice. And I spoke to them about theirs, and they made some interesting points. Not to sway you, not to convince you, but messaging came out, and I'll share that quickly, that they doubted whether the Russian-Ukraine issue that I raised with you all would be about democracy. It would be about economics. What's it costing us? How much is it going to cost us? The same thing in China and Taiwan. On the social issue about public health, they said that it was messaging. Patriotism was the driver. Not some CDC guideline. It was doing the right thing. Really the core of leadership. I was taken by that. And in terms of President Biden, another insightful feedback I got, that President Biden should not tackle problems that he has nothing to do with. He can't control the price of gas or the cost of a loaf of bread. I mean, he can do things, but it is capitalism. It is companies. It is leaders of those companies that are setting the business plan that ultimately leads to the price or cost. If an oil company drilled more, we would have more oil. If they choose not to, the price will stay up. And President Biden probably has not a great impact on that other than trying to convince them to produce more. But ultimately, it'll be their decision or a decision of another country that pumps oil. Anyway, just a very, very few feedbacks from colleagues, very bright people that I reached out to in preparation. Well, let me thank you very much for allowing me to share with you this episode on reflective practice. Taking this short journey into the unknown will better prepare you for our uncertain tomorrows. As Confucius said, by 3 methods may we learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is bitterest. Incorporate reflective practice into your leadership journey regularly. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Leadership Works podcast. I am Dr. John Bedker. Have a great day.
Thank you all for tuning in. We sincerely hope you will tune in again to the Leadership Works podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends. And, of course, we hope you will subscribe and be a regular listener. Again, thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Works podcast. Have a great day.